Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of my Musical Moments series, and today we are talking about some wonderful music that you don't know, written by composers that you do know. So we're talking about these three guys. They wrote a lot of music that you know, but if I were to say to you, what's the best piece by Tchaikovsky that you don't know? Well, you don't know, do you? But hopefully, by the end of this video, you will, so stick around. That's right, so today we are talking about some wonderful music, in this case specifically some wonderful symphonies by people that you know some of the symphonies that they wrote. But what if you were to say, hey, what's the best piece that I don't know? Well, hopefully today we can begin to explore some of those great pieces that maybe you might want to get to know. And we are going to start with this guy again. That's right, he keeps coming up, and it does seem in these last couple of weeks he's come up even more than usual. But you know, how do you not talk about Mozart? He is very good at the composing thing. When we talk about Mozart and his symphonies, the most famous are the last three that he wrote. One of those is the Jupiter Symphony, one of those is 40, that one, see, you recognize that, and then 39, also very, very highly regarded. We're not sure that he even ever heard those during his life, so there's a little bit of a lore and excitement around those because we don't know if Mozart even ever heard them, and they're such amazing achievements. But just before that, we move to another set of three great symphonies, number 35, 36, and 30. No, 38, because you watched my video on misattributed music. Check it out if you haven't already. Super fun video, and did pretty well too. So lots of people were watching that. Anyway, we're talking about the first of those, Symphony number 35. It is called the Hoffner Symphony because of who commissioned this particular work. And there's a little bit of a convoluted story around it. There's another piece called the Hoffner Serenade. That piece was written for a wedding, I believe, and Hoffner's good friends of the Mozarts. He commissioned this piece, and then a couple years later, he was going to his ennoblement, which is just a kind of a cool event for a member of the minor aristocracy, kind of a big deal. And so they commissioned Mozart to write another thing. He was super busy though and didn't really have time to do it, but eventually kind of got around and put together a couple little serenade type things, which then he later reworked into what we know today as the Hoffner Symphony. It is really spectacular and charming. It's got this great little opening. You've been listening to it now. But the things I'm going to talk about today specifically are the slow movement. I know, weird, I never talk about slow movements, but today I am. The slow movement, it's really charming. And I think sometimes people go, oh God, the slow movement, it's going to be 15 minutes of like cows mooing or something. This is not that. It starts out a little bit slow, but what I love about it is even in the very, very first theme, look at that, it starts to get to the point where things start moving. The melodic material moves pretty quickly. Those are actually 30-second notes. So even though at this slow tempo, it just feels like it's really moving along. And then the best thing about this particular movement, this is the second theme of this Sonata Allegro form, and I just think it's so charming. Listen. And I just love how it begins. That impetus is just absolutely lovely. I really, really love it. Beautiful music. There's a minuet too. It's also nice, kind of big and heavy, jocular minuet, if you will. But then the other thing to really note about this is the finale, and it is great. It starts off really quietly. Like it just busts forth in this incredible energy. And this is a fast movement. When you hear it played live, you're like, wow, that's fast. But honestly, I've never heard it played as fast as this recording. As I was looking for recordings to play for you today, I was like, wow, this is fast. Claudio Abbado, I've never heard it played this fast and this clean. Because, oh my gosh, it's just like perfectly clean and so exciting. Really just a barn burner of a finale. So thrilling, and I hope that you will check that out. Mozart's 35th Symphony, called the Hoffner Symphony. Now we move on to another really famous composer. That's right, yours and my favorite. This is Pete Tchaikovsky. He wrote three fabulous symphonies that almost everybody knows, the 4th, 5th, and 6th. But if you're good at math, which I suspect you are, you know that there are probably 3 symphonies before that one. They are interesting, curious, and in one case, excellent. And this is actually his second symphony. And this piece is nicknamed the Little Russian Symphony. And no, we are not talking about a little Russian. No, we are talking about Little Russia, which way back in the 1300s was actually the name for Ukraine, the region, which then was known as Little Russia. And in fact, this piece, he calls it the Little Russian Symphony because he uses several Ukrainian folk songs as the melodic material in this. It starts right at the beginning. We have this big chord and the horn. So right away you hear this sort of soaring melodic theme from the horns, and you can tell it sounds like a song already, and certainly many people in the audience at that time would have recognized this song and said, oh, well, I know that tune, that's a great old tune. And much has been made about the fact that Tchaikovsky on the one side and the Russian Five or the Mighty Five, that they had this, oh no, they were always fighting each other. They loved this piece too, so there was a lot of getting along between the two of them, but certainly in the Little Russian Symphony, they liked that because, hey, it really celebrated uniquely Russian, or Little Russian in this case, uniquely Little Russian history, heritage, folk songs, etc. So they loved this piece. So they didn't always butt heads the way some music historians would make you want to believe. Couple of highlights of this because it's a really charming piece. You just heard that first melody. The second movement, there really isn't a slow movement in this. It's kind of got this nice little jaunty little march to it. It starts with a timpani on these low notes playing exactly what you think timpanis play here. Right? So really colorful there, and then this lovely march tune comes out in the winds. Perfectly charming. The rest of that movement, the same thing. We'll spend a little more time on the third movement here. This is the Scherzo, and just as you might expect, it involves a very, very fast tempo, and it's in 3, but not just in 3, because you hear 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? No, but also the phrases tend to be arranged in groups of 3 too, so you're building on that, and it just has this wonderful sense of 2 against 3 sometimes, so he's always playing with the rhythm. And then what I think is the most exciting moment is when the trio begins here. So just like you would expect in the trio, it moves to the winds for this, moves to the winds section, and it's not in 3 anymore. And again, of course, this is also based on a Ukrainian folk song, so people would have recognized this and be like, oh wow, he's worked that into this symphony. And so we have the actual Scherzo in 3, this part in 2, and then arguably the best moment of this movement is as he transitions back from the trio, where he's now in 2, but he figures out a way to kind of transition back into the Scherzo, and he does it rather brilliantly in this way that just kind of falls into it. And I love it when composers figure out ways to sort of just naturally fall back into the material as they follow the form. Essentially, the form is telling Tchaikovsky what he's supposed to do here. It's like, okay, you've got this great trio, now you're supposed to get back to the Scherzo. So rather than just ending it with a cadence and then starting the Scherzo again, he kind of falls back into it in this really elegant way. So well done, really seamless, and just it feels so organic and part of things. And this is, I think, a big step up from his first symphony that we heard before. And I think it's just, you really see this great symphonist and someone who's really got some wonderful skills coming along. Now, the other movement to note here is the finale, which begins with this kind of big, slow, and grand fanfare. But pretty soon it actually states the main theme and a little bit faster, so we'll cut right to that part. Here's the main theme of the finale. Now, this theme comes back, I think the last time I conducted this, I actually counted in the score, and it was like 62 or 63 times, if I'm remembering correctly. I didn't recount, so that might not be perfect, but it's a lot. He uses this theme a lot. And it's really, really catchy, and believe me, once you've heard it 60 times, you are gonna be humming this tune on the way out, sort of like Hello Dolly. At the end, you've just heard it so much you can't help but go out of the theater whistling that tune. Same thing here, you walk out, you're like, wow, that is a catchy tune. Well, you heard it 60 times, so of course it's catchy, but it actually is. And then there's this wonderful little transition theme here, which I just love. And you can hear it's such a nice contrast because we have that really short and staccato main theme, and then here in a very different key, because we were in C major, now we're in A flat major, so kind of distant, and yet this glorious, just sort of sweeping theme. There apparently are some lyrics to that, palm trees swaying and donkeys braying, something about that. So lovely, and just a great transition here. And the energy just keeps building and building and building. So exciting, and you can hear, the cymbals come in, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until he doesn't know what else to do, so he brings in, yes, the tam-tam. He actually does this in more than one piece, kind of like, well, I don't know what else to do. It just gets so big and so exciting. He's just like smack on the tam-tam to kind of bring everything to a halt. And then we have the coda. Now, my favorite performance of this, which I have stolen a few ideas from this, because this is Bernstein's recording, and it says presto, so you're like, oh, I should just go really fast, right? Well, yes, but Bernstein starts just a little bit slower than that, and then he allows it to get faster and faster and faster, and it just has this wonderful energy that takes you and gets you swept up in this tune. And again, you've heard it a lot, but here you hear it even faster as Tchaikovsky just brings this piece to a thrilling closing. So again, a wonderful piece. You probably don't know this one, Tchaikovsky's Second Symphony, nicknamed The Little Russian. Now for our final example today, we move to that other master. This is Beethoven. Now Beethoven, everybody knows, the Eroico, number 3, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. That one, you're right. Beethoven's 7, also adored, if you're maybe just a little bit deeper. And then of course the Ninth Symphony. So what is it about those odd numbers that everybody loves? That's fine. Let's be honest. That's fine that people love the odd-numbered symphonies. They are that good. But I think it kind of engenders this idea that maybe the even-numbered symphonies aren't that good. That's just not true. The even-numbered symphonies are fantastic as well. In fact, so much so I wasn't actually sure which one to choose. Of course, the Sixth Symphony, probably the best known of the even-numbered symphonies, but other than that, they get no love at all. Second Symphony, wonderful. Fourth Symphony, also wonderful. Sixth, I mentioned. The Eighth Symphony, so great. Actually, the very first symphony I ever conducted. But today we're going to talk about Symphony number 4, and this is such a great work. Probably, if you're like, I want to listen to a Beethoven symphony that I haven't heard, listen to number 4. It is so great. Now, there's the story of how this piece was commissioned. Actually, Beethoven was visiting some friends, and they went to go to a big party at some aristocrat's house, and he knew Beethoven was coming, was a huge fan, and so he had the orchestra play Beethoven's Second Symphony for the composer. He was like, this will be great. I'll have my local orchestra play this piece for the master, Ludwig van Beethoven, who's coming over to dinner. Isn't this cool? He loved the Second Symphony. Beethoven had already written the Third Symphony at this point and was writing the Fifth Symphony. But this guy loved Beethoven so much, he said, hey, Beethoven, I want to commission a new work. I love the Second Symphony. I want something like that, but a new one. Well, Beethoven was writing the Fifth Symphony, and he was kind of like, if this guy liked the Second Symphony, he might not have in mind what I have in mind for the Fifth Symphony, because he knew he was thinking big for the Fifth Symphony. So maybe not the perfect piece to kind of say, oh, sure, I'll take this commission. Here's my Fifth Symphony. So instead, he said, you know what, I'll write something new in the style of that Second Symphony, which is just jovial and happy and wonderful and buoyant. Now, you wouldn't know it from the beginning, because it does start out a little moody here. But like so many pieces with this slow introduction, you're a little unclear. What is the harmony? What key are we in? It's a little slow in the tempo. You're not quite sure exactly the feeling or the mood that he's going for. But it isn't long until we burst into this happy, joyous music. And that pretty much stays throughout the entire piece. It's a rather optimistic and, as I said, buoyant piece. Very much like the Second Symphony that it was kind of modeled after and certainly commissioned in the spirit of. So just like some of the other examples, we're going to talk about the Scherzo here because I just love it, and it has that same quality that I mentioned in the Tchaikovsky. Yes, it's in 3. Scherzos are supposed to be in 3. They're either fast minuets or, in some cases, really fast minuets. But here, just a fast minuet in 3. But again, he's playing with this idea of 2 patterns. Ba, ba, da, da. Right, so you feel, wait, is it in 2 or is it in 3? And he keeps kind of playing with that idea throughout, and just really exciting because it kind of feels like it's always jumping ahead of itself, which gives you this sort of slightly queasy feeling, almost kind of like being on a roller coaster a little bit. It's always like cutting out and then, and then we have this lovely little falling figure. But You know, I just love the way he's always playing with you. And then finally, of course, a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant finale here. And just like the Mozart that I mentioned at the beginning, this is just a real barn burner of a finale. So exciting and really, really fast, almost perpetual motion. So everything is almost in constant motion. Somebody's playing fast 16th notes during this whole thing. A very, very well-known melody, and lots of players, they get this in their fingers because it's something like, wow, once you've played this, you really just like get it dialed in there because it's tricky to play, it's really fast. Audiences just love this piece, and it's not played nearly enough. One particular instrument usually knows this better than most, and that is the bassoonist here, because there's actually a really famous bassoon excerpt that you have almost always. Do you hear this little excerpt when you audition bassoons for orchestra chairs? Because it's a famous, famous moment. Now, you mentioned the main tune, that's the exposition, right? We hear theme 1. Now, when we come back around in sonata form, watch my video if you haven't already, but sonata form, we come back around for the recap. We're supposed to hear that tune again. But Beethoven does it differently in the recap. He doesn't have everybody play it the first time. It's just the bassoonist. So a very, very famous spot, because this really, really fast pattern happens only for the bassoonist, and we get to hear it right here. And then he brings in everybody. So that's a really famous moment for the bassoonist, and I think anyone who knows this piece, when you're listening to it, you're like, oh, here it comes, that famous bassoon solo, and you can see the bassoonist get ready for it. Usually he or she is all like wound up, like, all right, here comes my big moment. It's something you hear them practicing all the time. Almost every bassoonist worth their weight has worked on it to some degree, or at least played it in concert. Again, this is a fantastic finale, just so exciting, rushes to the end. And again, another example of a piece that you really should take a listen to if you want to maybe go just a little deeper than the pieces that everybody knows. So it's been fun to share these with you today. I hope you enjoyed them. Hey, why don't you weigh in? Tell me some of the pieces that you think are maybe some of the best symphonies by people we know, but symphonies that not everybody knows. Hope to hear from you. And if you've gotten this far in the video, there is a like button below. I hope you will click it. And there is a subscribe button below. I hope you will click that if you haven't done so already. Thanks very much. We have some great music for you coming up in future videos, so keep an eye out for those. Take care. And bonus piece, I know I mentioned that these are the best ones, but you know what? Let's be fair. Symphony number 8. It almost made the list because it also so charming, so thrilling. There's no slow introduction. It just launches right into the main theme. Boom, big, wonderful piece. There's no slow movement. The metronome was just invented, and this was Beethoven's reaction, because he kind of felt that the metronome was going to rip the musicality out of pieces by making that tempo so relentless. And he kind of is playing with that here. He's like, look, it's like a metronome, see? And then, of course, just a thrilling, thrilling finale in this piece. So number 8 almost made the list. That's our bonus piece for today. Check out number 4 first, and then number 8.